Morning, everyone. Sorry for a technical difficulty, but last-minute software updates, always a good way to start your mornings. Hope everyone is having a good day so far. Appreciate you guys joining us today. My name is Brian Giddinelli. I'm the founder of Motorsport Reg. We help about 1,000 car clubs, racetracks, and sanctioning bodies manage their memberships, licensing, and events. And today, we're going to be discussing both an important but also a tricky topic, and that's safety. Specifically, safety in HPDEs and a new head and neck restraint that works with stock seatbelts. Let me start by telling you just a short story. So I was at Buttonwillow a few years ago, and I went for a ride with a friend in his race car. And we were approaching the last corner that leads onto the front straight. And if you've ever been to Buttonwillow before, you'll know there's only one wall at Buttonwillow. My friend turned in a little bit early. We dropped some wheels at the exit, and we hooked the car across the track. I was in the passenger seat, and we hit the wall at 55 miles an hour according to the data. So it was a pretty big shunt. It totaled the car. It was frightening as it was approaching, but the good news is that we were both in full gear. So it was a race car. We had 6-point harnesses. We had our suits on, visors down, gloves, and both of us were wearing Hans devices. And so for me personally, I saw stars for a split second. Then the car came to a rest, and we were totally okay. You know, there's obviously a big bill for my friend and a bruised ego, but neither of us had any injuries. I don't even recall being sore the next day. So when that happened, you ship your tethers back to Hans for recertification and everything. And they told us that at the time we were the first double occupant Hans crash, which is sort of a dubious distinction to hold, right? Especially since I never planned to, quote unquote, use my Hans device. But of course, I was really, really, really happy that I had it at the time. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to run a poll here and get some feedback from you guys on a couple topics today. The first one I want to ask about is whether or not you have ever been in an incident on track. And I would count that as whether you're a passenger, like I was, or whether you're the driver. Either way, yes or no. Now, hopefully you all answer no, but I know that at least one of us, that being me, is going to answer yes. Okay, we're getting some votes today. Awesome. Interesting. All right, well, so far, the final vote's not in, as we know how it goes, but about 40% of people right now are saying they've been in some kind of an incident hitting something at a track. So that's frankly a higher number than I expected. But I guess that goes back to the old saying that I've always heard, which is it's not a matter of if, but when, if you do this sport or this hobby long enough. So interesting info as we get started here. When I started instructing in 2003, the fastest car at the track was usually something like a 95 M3, something that has 240 horsepower, right? Well, you know what has 240 horsepower today? I looked this up yesterday. A 2016 Honda Odyssey minivan. In fact, it actually has 248 horsepower. So it's clear that we are living in an era of awesome sports cars that are tons of fun to drive, but they also keep getting faster and faster and faster. And I'll be honest that my crash led me to reevaluate the notion of instructing in a street car and just simply hoping that nothing goes wrong. Now, I don't want to blow this out of proportion because by and large, my experience is that HPDEs and track days, injuries are very, very rare, thankfully. Knock on the closest wood nearby. But clearly, I'm not the only one who's had these thoughts. This is the biggest webinar we've ever hosted at Motorsport Reg. We had 800 people sign up for today's topic to hear from our two guests. And that to me says that more than one of us has had this thought before. So I want to keep things in perspective, but clearly this is something that folks have thought about. At the end of the day, if none of us ever put a wheel wrong, then we wouldn't even need helmets. You could just go out and drive around, it'd be totally fine. But we're human and we make mistakes. And beyond that, we can just be victims of circumstance like oil or coolant or a part can fail, something else. I've actually had the steering wheel in my car come off going underneath the bridge at Road Atlanta, which was exciting, shall we say. You can actually see that on YouTube if you run a search for it. So ultimately, safety equipment is a form of insurance, and that's what we're going to learn about today is how to keep ourselves safer. So just a couple of logistics. There's a chat window on the left of your screen. We're going to hold Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, type them into the chat window, and we'll ask as many of the questions as we can of Scott and Trevor today at the end. At the end, we're also going to share an exclusive link to the group buy. So if you decide that you are interested in one of these head and neck restraint devices that we're going to talk about, there will be a big discount that you can use towards that purchase. So let me go ahead and introduce you to our two experts today. So first from Simpson Racing Products is Trevor Ashline. He's the VP of Engineering there, and he's the actual creator of the Simpson Hybrid, which is the device that's certified to work with three-point harnesses that we're going to talk about today. Not only can he tell you what it is, but he'll tell us what it can and can't do. And he's got some really interesting crash data and some sled test videos that he's going to share with us today so you can see it in action. Good morning, Trevor.
Hi, Brian. I hope you're hearing me.
Yep, we hear you loud and clear. No video, but,
okay.
But we hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, sorry about the video. I guess we're skipping that for today.
Okay. And Scott Elkins is with us from the Motorsport Safety Foundation. He and I had lunch a couple of months ago, and he was telling me about a really interesting rental program they do with the hybrid at MSF. And so he's going to share some of his real-world experience with the device, as well as talk about his program a little bit. So good morning, Scott.
Hey, good morning, Brian.
Thanks to you guys both for joining us and spending some time with us today. I know that there's, a boatload of people who are interested to hear what you guys have to say. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Trevor. Trevor, can you start by telling us what the hybrid is and what problem you designed it to solve?
Basically, the hybrid is a head restraint that I developed in 2005, 2006 timeframe. What I was really looking to do was, there was a new standard out, the SFI 38.1 for head restraints, and I was looking for a new device that would be accepted all over the world, basically. And as we go through the slides here, go ahead and you'll see that the hybrid head restraint is a head restraint with basically 3 different load paths on it. It has redundant systems, one on top of the other, that all basically do the same thing, and that is to reduce the head load off from the neck. And it does that, first of all, by using a lever arm effect. You can see that the upper tethers connect to the hard part of the device. Then there's a long back that comes down to a chest strap. What happens there is as the head goes forward, it pulls on the tethers and rotates the device about the shoulders, where you have a long lever arm on the bottom side of it being reacted against by the chest strap. So basically you're taking head load and you're using a lever arm and transferring that load into the chest through the chest strap. That's the system that usually is in place for the 3-point seatbelt system. The second way that it takes out head load is through the SAS system, the seatbelt anchoring system, which, if you look on the right side, is the loops that go down to the bottom of the device, and it's only used in a 5, 6, or 7-point set of seatbelts. The third way that it takes out head load is using the belt bearing surface on the shoulders of the device. If you look at again, back up to the tethers where it mounts to the helmet, the tethers transfer the load down to the hard part, and that hard part is basically pulled up into the shoulder belts on a 5, 6, or 7-point system, where it creates friction, which slows down the head load and takes away head load. So 3 redundant systems in this head restraint. Go ahead and go to the next one.
Trevor, if you have the buttons at the bottom, you can also move the slides along.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Let's try that. Okay. In 2006, it was certified to the SFI 38.1 head restraint standard. Both SFI and FIA are what we use in racing as our rules committees, basically. In 2007, it was NASCAR approved. And in 2010, the 8858 FIA standard for head restraints was rewritten to allow this device. So it's actually got a lot of history behind it, and it has passed every standard out there known. The frontal head restraint use with a 3-point seatbelt has always been a discussion with HPDE drivers and that sort of thing, because what we rely on for normal head restraints in a race car is the shoulder belts and the seatbelt system in the car. When you take away the two shoulder belts and you don't have the friction from the belts onto the device, it makes the device, other devices that we make, both Hans and our hybrid pros, it makes them ineffective because they don't have any other load paths that they can use to transfer load. Whereas the hybrid does, and it was tested by partners of ours in Detroit. Third-party testing showed that it had showed great promise in reducing neck tension in passenger cars. And I'm hoping you guys are keeping up here with the slides. The head restraint that we used for, or the setup basically that we use for testing the hybrid in a 3-point is definitely different than what we use for in the race cars. The setup in a passenger car is a 3-point set of seat belts. Basically, for FMVSS world or ECE world, for a passenger car, you're only testing that car to about 30 miles an hour and at the most 35 Gs in an NCAP test, and that's only done once during the vehicle program. So we set up a test protocol here where we have a steel seat and just the 3-point belt with the helmeted dummy for our baseline, and then helmeted dummy with the hybrid on for the test with the hybrid. You'll notice in this picture that we don't connect the SAS straps on the bottom. In fact, for HPDE use, I would just take them off because they're just in the way. They don't have anything to hook to in this.
Trevor, let me interject before we move forward, Trevor. For folks that aren't in the industry, can you explain a little bit about FMVSS and sort of how it relates to, say, the other tests that maybe people are more familiar with, like 38.1?
Yeah, basically, for passenger cars, federal motor vehicle safety standards is what you have to pass as a manufacturer in order to be able to sell your vehicle in the United States, let's say. Now, there are these same standards for Europe, ECE standards, but all of them are very, very close with this setup that you see right here in the test lab for seatbelts. This is a standard seatbelt test that we would run for a passenger car. So that relates to how we do it in a race car, in that in the race car, we use a much stronger set of seatbelts, basically a 6-point set of seatbelts for our testing, but we still use a steel seat in the system. Now, I'll go forward here to the next slide. And this is basically a comparison of the 38.1 test versus the FMVSS 213 test for passenger cars. You'll notice right off on the bottom, the graph on the left is our 38.1 test, and it's basically a 70 G test, whereas the test on the right, which is the FMVSS pulse, is a 23.6 Gs, basically 24 Gs at 30 miles an hour. The SFI test being 70 Gs at 40 miles an hour. So it's a much lighter pulse, but to that regard, your passenger car equipment can't handle what the race car equipment can. So we basically had to bring down the severity of the test in order for it to be tested with the 3-point set of seatbelts without breaking the set of seatbelts.
Now, wait, before you move on, when you say we pull it down, that's not a decision you make, but rather the standard, the FMVSS test, is only 30 miles an hour because of that limitation of stock seatbelts, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in those slides, if you could go back to the charts just for a second, is there anything worth pointing out aside from the severity of the impact, the G load, 24-ish versus 70? Is there anything in those charts specifically, like maybe the dwell at the bottom or something else that's important to understand as a difference?
Basically, as you look at these two graphs, what the one on the left is, it comes directly from a race car crash. In fact, it was Christian Elder in a NASCAR Cup car at Chicagoland back in 2002. At that point in time, we had boxes on the cars, so we were able to get the actual trace from the car, from the actual accident at the racetrack, and transfer that into the sled lab. That's like the best of all the worlds right there, because you get real world information on how the car crashes, and then feed it into your high G sled, or basically your sled that you're going to use for your dynamic testing. Similarly, the graph on the right was made up by the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards Committee that would basically average out a number of different cars in order to get this pulse that everybody would have to test to. And generally, it is considered a rough or a difficult test in passenger car world, 3-point set of seat belts.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so to the point of basically a passenger car can't take the types of loads that a race car can. I did a test back in 2000 when we first started our program looking into racing accidents, and we took and ran it's a Grand Am car, vehicle, passenger car, into the wall at 62 miles an hour. And I think Brian's got that video.
Yeah, let me share that for you guys. You guys should see a video load from YouTube.
Change in velocity, or delta velocity, was 62 miles per hour. You can see this as a car goes into the wall.
I'll play it one more time for you guys just so you can make sure you see that.
This is actually from a video that I did with Benny Parsons years ago. That's where the audio comes from.
Change in velocity, or delta velocity, was 62 miles per hour. You can see this as a car goes into the wall and comes to a complete
for folks who are on iOS,
no...
it sounds like Flash video might not work for you. So if you're on an iOS device, you might not be able to see that, but we'll include the links. I think we can include the links in the follow-up email. Go ahead, Trevor. Let me come back to the presentation.
Okay, so basically what that's there to show you is there's no way that anyone can survive in just a 62 mile an hour barrier crash with a passenger car, because there's not enough structure in the car in order to the occupant compartment still intact. So testing a passenger car at the levels you do a race car it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's why we tested it to the levels that we did. In the next couple slides, you're going to see the actual baseline test that we did and the test with the head restraint on. What you'll want to look at is the dummy's eyes. You're going to see a view similar to this one. In the baseline test, you'll see the dummy's eyes rotate quickly inside the helmet, versus with the test with the head restraint on, you won't see the head rotate inside of the helmet, inside the visor opening, and you can see that the head is controlled better.
Okay, so here's the first video. This is the baseline. So Trevor, just to make sure that I understand and we can explain to the audience here, this push on the sled is following the severity graph, if you will, that we just saw a minute ago. So basically it's imparting that G loading and rate of acceleration onto the sled with the dummy in that setup, correct?
I'm sorry, I was reading something on the side, Brian. What was that again?
The video that we're seeing here is imparting the acceleration into the sled of that chart that we saw on the previous slide, correct?
Yes, what's happening is, I'm not sure if you can hear me right now. Can you hear me, Brian?
No, maybe, I'm sorry. I think the video might have cut off our audio.
Yes, all right, that's what happened. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. The sled is pushed up against the piston, and the piston actually pushes the sled backwards, which for relative motion sake, is the same exact thing as a car running down the road and then impacting something solid.
Okay. And do you want me to play now the hybrid version?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this one's the hybrid. What Trevor was saying is you'll want to watch like the eyes and the eye port. Again, sorry for folks on iOS. We'll have to show you the videos later, but for everyone else, here's the hybrid. Play one more time here for you.
Okay, are we back?
Yep.
All right, I have seen the videos many times. I couldn't see them right there, but I know what you just saw. And basically what you saw was the head restraint controlling that head whip. As that chin goes down inside of the helmet, that's what causes basal skull fracture. So these are the outcomes of the testing. Baseline test is above the SFI 38.1 failure level for neck tension. Put the hybrid on with in the system, and it lowers it 55 to 60% is what we found, and third-party testing has found. Similarly, there's also a drop in NIJ, which is neck injury criteria, about 33% in that. And basically what that shows you is that you're controlling the head over the top of the neck with the device. What this demonstrates is that neck tension is the force that causes basal skull fracture. When you get above the SFI 38.1 line, you are in danger of becoming injured, whereas below the line, the experts in the field believe that you're not in danger of getting an injury.
So just to make sure that everyone understands what Trevor just said, what the Hans device does to prevent deaths like Dale Earnhardt, which is a fracture at the base of the skull, the hybrid does a similar thing without the use of the 5 or 6 or 7 point harnesses. It's a different testing standard, but it's controlling the same action on the head to basically prevent, correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, but it's shear in the neck, right? It's like the shear of your head moving forward and your neck not.
Well, shear is just a little bit different. Tension is more your head weight is trying to pull straight off of your neck because of the whip forward. Your torso is being restrained backwards, and your head is trying to continue going straight forward. And what happens is the load, the weight basically of your head whipping forward is trying to pull axially off the top of your neck. Right. And unfortunately, the top of your neck is a very weak area, and that's what breaks first. So all head restraints, including this head restraint, Hans devices, hybrids, both, again, pass all the same standards. So they do the same exact job in a race car. It just happens that this particular device also has been found to work in a 3-point set of seatbelts, whereas a yoke style, our Hans device and our hybrid pros, without the long tail in the back and the chest strap, do not work in those conditions. Okay, I think that's the main point to look at here.
Yeah, great clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the testing. And next is basically how to fit the occupant with the device. A hybrid device is basically sized off the chest strap. The carbon part on the back is always the same size. You have varying chest widths that you can basically just measure with a tire tape or a tape around your chest, just below your pectoral muscles. If you're not measuring with a suit on, a driver's suit on, just add an inch measurement. These devices all have a 4 to 5 inch adjustment in them. So we can, and we also make custom ones. We've made many in between sizes, so we can accommodate pretty much anybody. The next slide is just the molded pad. If you look at the device, it goes down your back, and in a hard seat back, you will feel the device. So what we do in that case is we provide a pad that can be trimmed and molded into the back of a hard seat pad. For passenger cars, because you have such a soft seat back that you just the foam would accept the device without ever feeling it at all.
Hey, Trevor, I know that we don't have your video today, but just in case folks can't see it from the product photos and things, this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I can maybe try putting it on here in a second, but basically this sits up on your shoulders like this, and this part comes down the middle of the back, which is what provides that stability that Trevor was talking about.
Right. It goes on like a backpack. Go ahead and just open the buckle in front.
Let me see if I can do this with my my microphone on here.
Okay. And he's doing exactly what everybody else does. Pretty self-explanatory. Put the harness on and then adjust your chest strap. It doesn't need to be tight. It just needs to be snug, and that's good. And now you're ready to jump in the race car or your passenger car. Okay.
And so I'll tell you one thing that confused me when I got this was those straps that come off the bottom. And it turns out that for us in a street car, we just don't need them. So don't be confused by them. They're not necessary.
And they do length. There's a 3-bar adjuster at the midway up that strap. If you look straight down, Brian.
Yep.
The SAS strap, the loop you just had in your hand.
Yes.
Okay, back up that a few inches, and you're going to find a black 3-bar, metal 3-bar. Yep. That just simply unlaces from there. If you don't want them on, you just unlace them and take them off and throw them back in the box for HPDE use. Yep. Okay. All right. The other thing
hey, Brian.
The way this device attaches to the helmet, we've got.
Trevor,
yes.
Scott's got a point here, I think.
Yeah, sorry guys, didn't mean to totally jump in, but just since you put that on, Brian, maybe as a reference, give people an idea of what size you are and what size your hybrid is, because they, in our experience, they tend to run a little big. So I would expect you to have a small or a medium. Should be a tag on the side there.
On the side. Someone was looking at this. I took this to the track on Friday, actually, and someone else tried it on, and they said this was an extra small, but maybe they were just joking.
Yeah, they do. In my experience, and Trevor, you may agree with this. They tend to run a little large. So for an example, I'm 5'9". I weigh about 185. I've got a little bit of ballast in the front, and a medium is almost too big for me. So it just in terms of thinking about the sizes of them, there's a large adjustment range in there, and I just thought it would be a good point to kind of point out what size it was since you're showing it off there.
I've got the homologations sticker, but I don't see actually a size sticker unless it's part of that.
On the right hand side of the chest strap, Brian.
Yep.
There's a tag, a warning tag, and a little small size label on the inside of the chest strap.
Right. Okay. It is indeed an extra small, actually. So I'm about 5'8" and I weigh 140. And it's definitely like I'm in the middle of the adjustment range on the chest strap. So, relatively skinny, I guess, but 140, 5'8". So it's an extra small for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right. With that being said, the device that Brian just had in his hand has the post anchors. That is one of the options to be used for connecting the device to the helmet. If you look at the pictures here, the post anchor is generally the age-old Hans type anchorage that's on most helmets out there for use, especially for use for the Hans. We've adapted the double tether system to be able to hook onto that post anchor. And so it's a really easy deal. If you've got a Hans device that you're using in a race car setup with 5 or 6 point belts, and you also have this for instruction or HPDE use, then you don't have to change the post anchors on the helmet. You just connect the same exact tether to it. On the right-hand side is the M61 dual tether. You can see that one has a small metal blade, basically, with a hole in it. On the side of the helmet will be mounted the anchor, the black round anchor, with a pull tab, the yellow pull tab. You pull that down, you slide in the tether assembly, and you push to, basically you let back up and the pin goes through the middle of the hole, and that attaches that. That allows for a quick disconnect when you're getting out of the race car. But recognize that in a panic situation, you don't have to release the helmet anchors at all. Just get out of the race car with it all attached.
Scott, can you talk a little bit about, I'm sure people here have all different generations of helmets. Maybe Trevor's going to talk about that here, but how does my 05, my 10, or my 15 helmet vary in terms of what do I need to use this?
Right. Good question. What you're talking about, and so everybody's aware, almost everyone that participates has to use a motorsport helmet. Motorsports helmets have different ratings. What you just referenced, the 05, the 10, the 15, those are Snell ratings. Everybody can figure out what their Snell rating is by looking kind of under the inner padding of their helmet, and there will be a decal in there. Not a lot of folks use the 05s, the 10s, the 15s just came out last October. So those are probably the most common, but depending on what model you have, what rating you have, it will depend on how the posts are mounted on your helmet. So an 05 typically has nothing there. You typically have to drill holes in it to install it. A Snell 2010 helmet is one of two ways. Normally it has the holes already. If you look at your helmet, you've probably got little plugs that fill the holes. Sometimes the holes have threads in them, sometimes they don't. If they don't, what you have to do is you have to use a backing plate, which we can talk about that, and obviously that's available from Simpson as part of the mounting device. And then if you have a 2015, you're completely set. You're ready to go. Everything is already prepared for the mounts to go into your helmet. So most everybody has a helmet that this will work with. It's just the process of how you need to install the anchors yourselves.
Great, thank you.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. Basically, it attaches to any Snell helmet and some of the others, but that's on a different discussion, I guess. One of the things that we want to point out as Simpson is, as we really like the HPDE market, we think it's a great thing. I mean, guys getting out in their passenger cars and playing around on the racetrack is fantastic. But we would like to point out that in race cars, there are a lot more things in the race car that protect these guys on Sunday afternoon. When you see these guys flipping and tumbling down the backstretch of Daytona, recognize there are a lot of things in that occupant system that are very detailed to that driver. And we've put together a 15-minute can save your life video and also flyer. It's a pamphlet, and if I had video, I'd be showing it to you. But it's also on our website, www.teamsimpson.com. It can show you basically the recommended things that you need to do to your race car in order to have a complete system, and that includes seat belts, seatbelt mounting, seats, head surrounds, shoulders in the seats, all of those things. So we can get you to that very easily, and we do recommend more products. If you look at our envelope, our Simpson safety envelope of safety, basically it starts out with seat systems where we tighten up the driver. We put a very, very stiff pelvis and shoulders, along with head surrounds or head nets if you can't get a head surround in the system. The second thing is seatbelt systems. Look at your materials. Your 6 and 7 point belts right now are the state of the art. In fact, I recommend a 7-point belt for pretty much anybody. I put these on HPDE cars. I just put one in a Viper last week and a Corvette 2 weeks ago. So we can also do that, and we highly recommend it. The next thing is, of course, to add into your system an SFI and FIA approved head and neck restraint, which this hybrid can be that head restraint, or we have other models such as the Hans and the Hybrid Pro that work very well in complete systems.
Scott, you want to tell us about what you're doing with MSF?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program that we have, and just a little heads up, the Motorsport Safety Foundation is a nonprofit foundation with the target of trying to bring all the different factions in motorsports together in a singular direction in improving safety. So what we have is we have a program, we call it Race with Restraint. Maybe not the right name for HPDE because we obviously know that that's not racing. But what we do is we basically have an inventory of frontal head restraints. We have both Hans and hybrid. And what we do is we provide these devices available for rental. We'll get to the pricing of the device later, but there is a significant cost to it. There's been a great opportunity today to buy at a discount. But for those of you who only participate maybe 3 or 4 times a year, or just want to try it before you buy it, our program gives you an opportunity to do that. So what we do is we have our devices in our inventory. We have them available to ship to you for your event. We also work with a company called Race Suit Rental, who has online rentals as well. And what we can do is rent you a device, typically for about $35 a day plus shipping, to give you an opportunity to try it out before you buy it, or if you only participate 2 or 3 times. So it's a pretty unique experience. We have about 20 Hans devices, and we're getting close to having almost 40 hybrids in our inventory. So we've got a lot of devices that are available for folks to use. Obviously, with the shipping, it takes a little while to get it to them, but you can plan ahead. You know what event you're going to. We can make it work out. So there's a really simple form on our website. Our website is motorsport-safety.org, where folks can go on and take a look at renting the devices. So again, it's a rent it before you buy it, a really nice opportunity to try this device out before purchasing.
That's really cool. Scott, just as an idea, like how many of these have you rented over the past year, let's say?
So our inventory is 40 right now. So we've got 20 Hans, 20 hybrids. We're just putting in a new order of another 20 hybrids here this week, actually. And almost all of those units are out all at the same time. So they're constantly under rental. That's why we're increasing our inventory. Most people take them for typically a day or 2 to get them out. But, so I wish I'd have brought the stats in front of me, Brian. I didn't do that. But to tell you the total number of rentals, I can't recall it off the top of my head because they're constantly going in and out, back and forth. We've done a lot of work with HPDE groups, specifically trying to inform them about this product because it is very unique. It's very unique to a 3-point harness. So, and it's the only device that is available to be used in that HPDE environment.
Well, we can do the math on number of units times number of weekends and find some reasonable number there. So that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's
and
cool.
Obviously we don't have enough units, so it's a good problem to have.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about the group buy that we're running as part of this webinar. I saw a couple of questions about this already in the side. So the system retails for $1,160. That includes the post-helmet anchor kit. So one of the questions I saw in the sidebar was, what do you need if you're starting from scratch? If you just have a helmet, it's got no mounts on it yet or anything else. This kit includes everything you need. And correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, but whether you have an 05, a 2005, 2010, or 2015 Snell helmet, this kit will include all the parts necessary to make it work with those helmets, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, super. So Simpson's offering a 20% discount for this group buy. The cost of shipping is baked in basically, so the cost is $9.48 out the door. The URL that you see there, the MS Reg URL, is where you can buy the group buy. We will send this address out in a follow-up email, so you don't have to worry about scribbling it down. But the deal is limited for basically 30 days, so you have until December 15th. The deal is not exclusive to having although we really appreciate your patronage, listening to the information. I mean, that's an education component, but if you want to share this with a friend that couldn't make the webinar today, and you think they would be interested with it, a fellow instructor or a participant, you're welcome to share that with them. And again, we'll send this via email, so you don't have to worry about scribbling it down. Going back to the story I started this with, I forget what I paid for my Hans device because I bought it a long time ago, but let's just say it was $700. 30 seconds after we hit the wall, I would have paid you $7,000 for that device. So I know that it's not an inexpensive device, but I would say all of us have day jobs, we all have families, etc. So if you think that this is the kind of thing that you should have, don't let the financial aspect of it put you off. I think it's a good investment. And I can say, I used the one that I have a couple months ago at Mazda Raceway, and I felt just more peace of mind about having that on. I still think, like I said at the beginning, the risk, thankfully, is relatively low of injury. But that's what insurance is. It protects you when hopefully you never need it. That's the best kind of insurance, is that you actually never need the insurance. So those are the details on the group buy. That includes the shipping $948. And again, we'll send all this out via email afterwards, so you guys have it. I think this is never more true than it is today, which is you have to take some personal responsibility for your safety. And I think to Trevor's point about the total spectrum available to you, it can range from doing nothing, maybe people who don't even wear a helmet somewhere, like on the Nürburgring, on up to full race car level kinds of safety. And it's a spectrum. I don't think there's any one thing in there that's going to be the very best thing you can do, because it's a blend. But there's some questions about that, and I want to ask Trevor about some of those questions. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for your time. Thanks to Scott and Trevor for your time and your sharing of information. And now let's see if we can get some more information out of these guys, and we'll ask them some questions. Any closing thoughts that you guys want to share before we jump to Q&A? Okay.
I guess I'll go first on that one. This is Trevor. Yeah, I think the point that Brian's making is exactly my point, is that, it's great fun to get in these cars, these high horsepower cars, and go very fast. And we know that there's safety equipment in the cars that is tested to a level that is equal to street car use on the streets. Stuff that, 55 mile an hour kind of stuff, up to highway speeds, even 70 miles an hour, are very, very fast for the type of cockpit containment that you've got in your vehicle, tested to by the federal motor vehicle safety standards. So adding stuff to your car as soon as you get on that racetrack, because I know everybody with a brand new Shelby or Viper or whatever is going to go down that backstretch just as fast as they can go. And when you go off, it's too late. You don't have time to add stuff to your system at that point. And obviously we know nobody's going off, because that's not the point of what we're doing, but it happens. And when it happens quickly. So you need to have your equipment before you get in that race car and every time you get in that car.
There's a good saying among motorcyclists, which is all the gear all the time. The short ride where you don't wear your gear the one time is unfortunately where things happen, right? So all the gear all the time. I know a friend of mine just this past weekend at Thunder Hill had his race car catch on fire. And there's some video on Facebook if you want to go searching for it. I mean, the car was engulfed in flames, and he had all the gear. He had the visor down, he had a good suit, he had all the proper safety equipment, he had the fire system in the car, and it was still incredibly scary. So we think that this is never going to happen to us, and knock on wood, it doesn't. But again, that goes back to the insurance comment. So I kind of echo that sentiment about all the gear all the time.
Yeah, it's a great point, Brian. I mean, I think it's important to kind of bring up the topic that, while the ideal situation, as Trevor mentioned, is the envelope of safety. That's the best possible situation you can have, with a full seat, the full, the caged, everything. But we all know that doesn't happen with people who use their daily drivers for HPDE. So what we're trying to offer here is just another level of safety that exists, that you can do that and at least have a higher level of safety without making those massive modifications to your vehicle. So I think it's a unique product. It's a product that we've been utilizing with the foundation for over a year. And I think it's I think a webinar like this kind of comes off as a sales pitch sometimes, which it is a little bit, but it's also educational, making people very much aware that this is a unique product that can be used in the application that they're potentially already using. So the information that you can use it with a 3-point belt is new to a lot of people, and I think that's a key component coming out of this.
Well, I'll tell you, if there's one takeaway, I mean, I've been racing now for about 10 years. One simple takeaway for me was that in a 60-mile-an-hour impact, 3-point harnesses, a 3-point stock belt in many cases, don't even survive that impact. The belt itself.
Exactly.
That's not information that I would suspect. So if nothing else, I walked away knowing that, it doesn't take a lot of speed basically to have a lot of impact. Let me knock out a handful of quick questions here on the side. So if you have Hans anchors already on your helmet, you can use the hybrid as is. You don't need anything else. There's a question about whether or not this is better or worse than a Hans if you're in a full race car. And Trevor, I think you would say they are both to the same standards. So either one is basically the same. The difference being the hybrid, of course, can be used in a 3-point harness environment as well, correct?
Yes, that is the long and short of it. All of our devices at Simpson, including the Hans devices and the hybrids, the whole line of hybrids, all pass the standards of today, the SFI 38.1 and the FIA tests, and we also are NASCAR approved, and we're the only restraints that are.
Super. Can you talk about, there's some people who are saying, I don't understand the difference between the hybrid and the hybrid sport, which is at $599 instead.
Yes, that's a really good point. I've been seeing the same thing, and I made some notes on that. What you'll see if you pull up, unfortunately, I don't have video, so I can't show you it right now, but the hybrid is the original part. It had the long tail, the chest strap, the SAS straps. Once we did more and more testing on them, you find that in a seat belt, in a seat system, a full containment seat system, like you would see in a Cup car or a Formula One car, or IRL car, that sort of thing, you don't necessarily need all the directional protection that a hybrid can offer you. What you end up with is you start taking away elements like pulling the tail shorter. A Hybrid Pro and a Sport are a short tail device because they don't use that lever arm effect to do their job in a 5 or 6 point set of seatbelts. That's the main difference between the sports and the full hybrid, is the length of the back and the chest strap.
Yeah, we're talking about this part, like how far it comes down. So the other units don't have it come down as far, which is why they don't work in a 3-point harness environment.
Right. And a yoke style device, a Hans device, is exactly the same thing. As a pro, they both rely completely on the shoulder belts going over the shoulder pads of the device.
Great. So someone asked about whether or not they need matched systems for instructors during HPDEs. There are some clubs, I believe the BMW club is one of them, that says you must have equal safety equipment for the instructor as the driver. And the idea is the driver doesn't have a race seat and 6-point harnesses, and the instructor has just a stock seat and 3-point harnesses. I don't know what their policy is on head and neck restraint. You'd have to contact the organizations you run with. I suspect they would, if you're using stock harnesses, 3-point harnesses, I suspect the answer is no, you would not have to, but that would be an organization by organization question to ask. Okay, and let's see. And then we answered the question about the difference about the other units, so I think that's good.
I saw a couple of questions come in about airbag use, and I really think it's important because I hear
too.
In a system, in a passenger car system, like I pointed out before, they're tested to a 30-mile-an-hour test. The airbag does a very similar thing as a head restraint does in a race car, in that it's there to control head motion. So the use of a hybrid along with an active airbag is exactly right. What you're doing is you're making both devices work better. They'll work in conjunction, and your outcome will be better than without either one of them. Okay, so basically, to that extent, what I'm saying is the airbag was tested at, let's say, an FMVSS test at 30 miles an hour. now when you're, that will bring your protection level up with using it in conjunction with the hybrid up to, let's say, some higher level. I'm not going to throw a number out there because every car crashes differently and your crash pulse would be different. But recognize that you're going to get added protection by marrying both of them together, and they're going to work together.
It's like the envelope of safety, right? You're adding another component to that envelope.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Trevor, can you talk a little bit about sizing for women? We had a lot of women asking in the sidebar about, I know that it says you can do some custom sizing and so forth, but just in general, as one woman posted it, she also has some, what did you say, Scott? Extra
ballast
in the front. Yeah. So Trevor, how does it work for women? How do you size it?
We actually have harnesses that are made for women. We have a standard in our production area. We have a standard numbers that we put together, or we can custom measure the person. And usually it's add 2 inches or add some length to the shoulder straps, which will bring the chest strap down below, like where the your bra strap would be, instead of going straight across.
Okay, great. And then what about a couple questions about certification length? I think Hans devices are maybe 10 years or something like that. And then the complementary question was about testing or recertification after an incident.
2 parts to that question. The SFI head restraint standard 38.1 requires a 5-year recertification for a head restraint. The FIA does not require a recertification ever. And what we say after a hard impact, obviously, is send it back in. We'll take a look at it. We'll inspect the hard part and the tether system, the rubbers on the shoulders if you got them, and make a determination there if the part is okay, or if we can just change out the tethers, or if the device has been scrapped. But these devices normally are meant for the 70 G hits of a SFI test, and easily can do multiples of those. So I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of incidents on the racetrack even that have ever broken one or ruined it. But normally, as a safety precaution, we'll change the tether system in a really hard wreck where basically you've wiped out the car.
Right. And so just to clarify, there is no expiration date on, either a Hans but in this case, the hybrid. There's no expiration date like a helmet where after 10 years it's no longer valid anymore.
Yeah, that is correct for an FIA device. That is correct.
Okay. Getting some question about, sort of the environments. Like one person asks, if they have harnesses, should they use a Hans instead? And I think we've kind of established that the answer is no. They're both certified to the same level. But another question is like, what other kinds of cars could someone use this in? For example, can the hybrid also be used in a Formula car like a Formula V if the person wanted to use it in both environments?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my point earlier. Is you can use this device. It's currently being used by the entire John Force Racing team in all of his funny cars. We've also got they've been used in cup cars. We have them in a lot of rally cars throughout the world. So yes, absolutely. You can use this device in any car that you want, in any environment that you want. It will fit into any one of them. The comfort side of things, as you get into a race car, you're going to get a lot stiffer seat with a stiff foam insert. And that's where the key slotted back pad comes into use. We would normally cut a section out of the hard pad to allow the device to sit back into it so that you don't feel it when you're driving.
That kind of brings me to a question I've seen a couple times over here and that I asked myself, which is more safety equipment is better. But I think there is a line of thinking that, say, harnesses in a street car without a roll cage, without a roll bar, may be more dangerous than 3-point harnesses because they lock you into place. And I've seen a couple of those questions in the sidebar here. What are your thoughts about, hybrid or Hans, I suppose, in that scenario, but using a head and neck restraint in a car, in a street car with harnesses, rather if there's no roll bar or roll cage to go along with it?
Well, first of all, I would put a 7-point set of seat belts in any vehicle I was bringing to a track day, just because it's going to hold you in the car better, you're going to feel better, and you're going to drive better because of it. The second part of that, I've heard a couple times in different discussions that I've had about HPDEs, that a seatbelt system may hold you upright in a rollover, which, you know, in some car with some driver, that may be the case, and obviously it is the case, it's going to hold you up. But the benefits of that seatbelt system with the head restraint is going to far outweigh that one incident that may happen where you could have an injury. But I mean, a 3-point set of seatbelts is not going to help you as much as a 5, 6, or 7-point set of seatbelts in all the different types of wrecks that you can be into.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is, rather than worrying about the outlier, which there would be potentially some concerns, worry about the more common scenario where that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, great. Someone makes a good point here in the sidebar about you may want to point out, this is William from Forsyth, Illinois. He says, you may want to point out that a full coverage helmet is required. I am surprised that people still wear open-faced helmets at HPDE events. Is that actually true, Trevor? Can you talk to that? It sounds logical, but maybe it is or it isn't.
For use with any head restraint, a full-face helmet is not actually required. I do like a full-face helmet, I have to say. I've talked a lot of drivers out of open-face helmets. But when you go to Europe and you start going around the rally market, that is mostly open face helmets, and the head restraints still work just fine with controlling the head motion in those open face helmets. But again, I mean, I personally would rather see anybody in a full face helmet.
Yeah, that surprises me. I always wear a full face helmet. It just seems, seems better, but maybe not. That's really interesting to know though, that they work in both. Does this work with, if you've got harnesses in this case, does it work with 3-inch harnesses, Trevor, or does it require a 2-inch harness?
Actually, the SFI 38.1 test and the FIA test are both done with 3-inch harnesses. What happens in the system is the harness will actually curl upward to the inside of the neck of the device, and that's a normal thing. But yeah, they absolutely work with 2 or 3-inch belts.
Okay, great. And then these are kind of two related questions. One person's asking more about a comfort thing, which is, how is the side-to-side head movement range compared to a Hans that has sliding tethers? And he asks, he sees the extra straps, how does it compare to the Hans, for example? And then I think a complementary question to that is about side impacts and how the hybrid helps or doesn't help in a side impact, and maybe you can talk about a little bit in comparison to, say, the Hans or other head and neck restraints in general.
Well, we'll hit the side impact one first here. It's very quick. Head restraints are not meant for side impacts. These things are called frontal head restraints for a reason, and they're certified as such. We only do frontal and up to 30-degree angular frontal impacts. Your real side impact protection comes from the seat and the nets. And I know that there's a lot of information out there and misinformation out there about head restraints being able to do special things in side impacts. But what those things are, because basically I started a lot of that years ago, but my point wasn't that it's the only thing that you need. It works in conjunction with your headrest or with your net. It doesn't ever get left alone. And any manufacturer that's out there trying to tell you that just because they got a dual tether on it, on their head restraint, you don't need a head surround or a net is crazy, because that is not how it works. You need, these devices work with other pieces of the system. Okay, so that's the side impact one. Okay. What was the first part of the question?
The sort of the head-to-head in comparison to, say, a Hans that has sliding tethers. What's the range of motion?
Yeah, I mean, basically, over the years, I know that back in 2000, 2006, before we all turned to sliding tethers, it was very, very difficult to turn your heads in most cars. Now, the hybrid has a sliding tether also, and adjust the length of the tether in your race car environment. So, yeah, range of motion as far as side-to-side motion is just fine for any race car. There should be no between Hans or a hybrid in that respect.
And maybe just for people who've never worn a head and neck restraint before, certainly looking at a device like this, you could say, man, it must be restrictive or bothersome. I know even with the original Hans without sliding tethers, once you got in the car, you didn't really notice it anymore. And with the sliding tethers, I forget that it's on. How tight should this be adjusted, these tethers? And what should it, what does it feel like compared to not wearing a device? If you could talk to that a little bit.
In my when I've put them on and done different things in race cars and stuff, you lose it. You actually lose the device as soon as you strap in, start up, and head out to the racetrack. That's how these devices should be. You shouldn't be restricted in your normal driving environment. It's only when you do extreme things like hitting. If you're on a dirt track and you're hitting a lot of bumps, you may feel the tether as your head bounces around. And for those instances, I've got a lot of off-road guys that run different neck collars and things to help limit the head motion. But in normal driving situations, and especially on asphalt, you should never have a problem with head motion. Recognize we're 15, 16 years into normal head restraint use in this country and in the world. And we've overcome a lot of the things that were problems back in 2001 to 2005 era, let's say. Comfort being number one in that group. These new devices that we have are far and above more comfortable than ever. They shouldn't restrict you when you're just sitting in the race car statically or even on your normal driving. When they restrict you is when you wreck or something violent happens inside the car.
Yeah, great point.
Brian, I think that's a good point. In our experience, when we've been at the racetrack and had people renting this device and fitted it, that's one of the most common things that I have a conversation with people about. Is they come up and they go, "Hey, I can still move my head from side to side and I can still do this." It's like, I don't think it's tight enough. And I think there's a perception there that it has to be restrictive. And the way the devices have been built and with the sliding tether, as you just shown, it really isn't that restrictive, even to the point of being able to kind of drop your chin a little bit and move your head around. So it's actually pretty freeing. It's not necessarily supposed to hold your head completely in a static position all of the time. The intention isn't that it's uncomfortable. As Trevor has said, the intention is you don't even realize it's on. So I think that's a really good point, because a lot of folks think that it should be restrictive, and the design of the device, it doesn't have to be.
And actually, talking about, I asked about shear, Trevor, in terms of basilar skull fracture, and you were saying it's actually tension. I think I read somewhere, maybe in your materials, about if you can even touch your chin to your chest, that is not necessarily a problem. And I think that's
Right.
what, I think of that as being the problem, is this kind of shear motion, but that's not actually what you're protecting against. You're protecting against the this, really.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that people have said, that, they put the device on and say, I can still touch my chin to my chest. Well, that's not truly the physical action that's occurring in a BSF. That's not what's happening. So again, it doesn't have to be restrictive, and it doesn't have to stop your head from moving around. That's not really the point, right, Trevor?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we have that same question come up many, many times. What I show people is the helmet anchor location is centered right around the pivot point of your head on your neck, and it's basically just below your earlobe. So if you put your finger just below your earlobe and then touch your chin to your chest, your finger never moves. It just rotates. So the helmet, the device is not going to lengthen or shorten with that motion. To be able to set a hybrid device in the race car, what you do is you get in the car, strap in tight, just like you're going to race, get in your normal static position, and from that position, you take your chin or your head and move it straight forward with your chin up, kind of like stretching your head straight out. that's the motion that's going to happen in a wreck. Your head's going to try and go straight forward out of the car. It's not going to try and rotate then go straight forward. It only rotates because of the connection with the head to the neck. So the way we set these devices is after you're in the car, you're strapped up nice and tight. You want to be about between 1.5 inches of straightforward motion to 2.5 inches of straightforward motion. If you're in that range before you feel the tethers come on, that's fine. That's where we set the devices. That's how we use them in the test labs, and that's how we've been using them in the field.
Great point. A couple of sort of comfort and usability questions that I want to answer. There's Brad from St. Louis and some other folks have asked about, how this feels when you're wearing it. I think partly people see the back, and then there's a question or two about the back pad. And I'll just tell you my experience, which is if you're in a street car, which is what we're really talking about today, your seat has some padding in it, right? The cars that I was instructing in, I did not notice any discomfort or anything else associated with wearing the device. Once the car started moving, I forgot that I had it on, really. So in a street car, I don't think the back pad is necessary. It's really more if you've got a hard-backed race seat where you might want to have that pad for the device to sit in the middle of. But I think for our purposes today, in street cars and HPDEs, I think it would be very rare that you would need that. There's another question about whether or not the metal brackets on the back would scratch a stock seat. I suppose it's possible, but again, usually the device is quite close to you, so I don't think it's likely that it would hit your headrest uprights or anything like that. But it would depend probably a little bit on your seat. Yeah, Trevor.
I'll chime in on that one. There's actually a accessory that we have for the today's hybrid that will go over the top of those aluminum tether screws and stuff that will stop that from scratching the back of the seat, because we have had in the past some issues with that, and we do have fixes for that coming down the pike.
Okay, very cool, good. And then I saw a question from a couple folks, including Paul from Chatsworth. He was basically saying, as an instructor, I'm in and out of several cars in a 1-hour track session. Sort of how does this work? Is it comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the beauty of this, in some respects, to being in a full race car with a Hans and harnesses and everything else. The device is only attached to you. And so as quickly as you can buckle and unbuckle a stock seatbelt, you're ready to go. There's nothing else to do as far as the car is concerned. So, I had the same scenario when I was at Mazda Raceway, hopping between cars. And when I had 2 students back to back, for example, I just left it on in between because it doesn't, again, it doesn't really restrict your head motion. And it doesn't need to be super tight around the chest. So for the most part, it's, it's just like wearing a sweatshirt or something else. You don't really notice it once it's on. So I think from a comfort perspective, I know that when I first saw the Hans device, 10 years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is going to be a horrible burden to wear. It really turns out to be not a big deal. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. All right, let's see what else we got in here.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
I think it might be worthwhile to kind of revisit one topic that we kind of covered, but it seems like the question keeps coming up over and over again, which is, why is this device able to be used with 3-point harnesses, but yet I can't use the Hybrid Sport, I can't use the Hybrid Pro? I think that keeps coming up a lot. Guys are talking about having an R3, so I think it might be worthwhile to either, and Trevor obviously help us out here, either reference the Simpson webpage that shows all the different products, because it makes it very clear about about how much longer the back part is. But I think there's still some confusion with our audience as to why this product is the product or what the right product is to use for 3 points. So just to throw that out there.
Yeah, to their point, basically we'll go back over the lever arm. It's just got the longer back, and it's working off that lever arm effect. Now, I've seen a couple of guys on the side here also mention R3s. We also did R3 testing along with the hybrid testing. It pulled out about 40% of the neck tension. Now, since the R3 is not currently on our list, we don't offer it anymore. We decided to just stay with the hybrid since it seems to perform better in that anyway.
Okay. And then there's a comment from John, who is an Audi Club organizer who we know, and he mentioned to the equal restraints question that was asked earlier about whether a club might require a unit for the instructor as well. At least for Audi Club, they would consider the head restraint to be personal safety equipment and not vehicle safety equipment. So in their case, they would not mandate that the student, for example, provide one for the instructor. So I suspect that's what most organizations would look at it as, which is if you chose to wear gloves, they're not going to make you give gloves to the instructor either. So I think that's how most clubs will probably go with that. I see someone say that he thinks that's the same for PCA and BMW CCA as well. So I think that's okay there. There's a couple questions about just quick release and some of those things. Trevor, can you give just ballpark on what some of those prices are to add the quick releases and some of those other optional pieces are?
As far as what do you just change from an M6 to post anchor to an M6 anchor? I think they're about the same. I'm not positive. I think you'll have to go to the website and see the numbers, but they're very close. I think the post anchors are like $65 upcharge, and the M6 one is similar. So okay. If you're ordering it from stock, it's going to cost you about the same to have one versus the other.
Okay.
But check the website. I'm not clear on all of the exact costs. I saw some other stuff in here about hooking the device. I know this is an HPDE thing, but some of the guys seem to have 6-point belts and that sort of thing. The SAS straps hook into that seatbelt buckle. If you've got a cam lock, it usually goes into the lap belts or the shoulder belts. Basically anything into the buckle, and we've got that in our instruction book that comes with the devices. And if you've got some of the buckles in use have smaller tongues going in the sides. I know a Schroth does. They're shorter. We also make a webbing loop that can be ordered or put onto the device if you've got those types of seat belts. And it's also in the catalog and on the website.
Okay, great. I think we're covering most of the stuff, and I want to be respectful. You know, these guys have given us their time today, Trevor and Scott. What we'll do is we'll have a recording of this that we'll make available if folks want to come back to it. We're going to send a follow-up email with both a link to the group buy and some more details, but also a link to the recording if you want to either rewind and listen to something again, or if you want to share it with a friend. Someone did ask about whether they could share this presentation with track day groups and HPDE organizers, and the answer is absolutely. You know, it's as I said at the beginning, I don't think that we all need to jump up and down like the world's on fire, but I think this is something that I know I've personally thought about and has changed my mind on some things as far as getting into street cars and instructing. So I think if other folks can have the information to make the decision for themselves, that's a good thing for everybody, is to have the material available. So if you guys have any closing thoughts, you want to share them now, Trevor?
Well, basically, I think that this is a nice unit for what we're doing in HPDEs. I think that it's a great time to get out on the racetrack. We've got cars nowadays that are just incredibly high horsepower with lots of fun. They come off the showroom floor being able to do lap times like, you know, race cars of the past. So all of that is great fun. The whole deal here is simply know what you're getting into. You know, understand what happens when it all goes wrong, because when it does go wrong, you don't want to make it a really bad day.
Scott?
Yeah, I just think it's been I appreciate everybody signing on to the webinar and participating. Again, it's, we're just trying to share information and educate folks about this device that exists. Again, it's one of those things where, like you said, I mean, you wear as much as you can, and it's a unique opportunity for the guys that are participating in HPDE with a 3-point belt to add another level of safety. So I think it's very unique. I think Simpson has provided a very, very generous discount to folks who want to buy it. And again, if they don't want to buy it, they can reach out to us. I think you're going to give our contact info. Reach out to us and talk to us about perhaps renting a device. There's been a lot of questions that came through that obviously we weren't able to get to every single one. So I would encourage folks, at least from my standpoint, to feel free to email me and ask any further questions that they have about it. Obviously, the Motorsport Safety Foundation works with a partnership with Simpson in regards to this product. So we want to make sure that everybody has as much information and education about the product as they can get. So I don't think, it's not ending with just because the webinar's ending. I think folks should feel free to reach out and still talk about this and still have conversations, because the end goal is to, make everybody safer. And that's what it's all about.
Definitely. I think, just going to see if I had any closing thoughts. I did want to mention one thing. If you happen to be in Indianapolis in a couple weeks at PRI, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said Simpson will be there exhibiting, and you'll have these units if someone wanted to see one in person.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the main building, in the main room at PRI. We'll also be doing dealer seminars and always available for a quick discussion at the booth or anywhere else.
Cool. Yeah, it's great to be able to see it in person. All right, well, thanks to Scott and Trevor, both of you guys, for your time today. Thank you for everyone that came out, a huge audience, which I think is great. Sometimes we don't all feel that safety is taken as seriously as maybe it should be. And I think 800 people signing up for this webinar is signs that people do care about it. So appreciate your time. There is a recording. We will send that along with all the other notes. And we hope you guys will take a look at the group buy. If you have any questions, the contact information is on the screen, and we will also send that in the follow-up email. So everyone have a wonderful Wednesday, and keep the shiny side up. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks again.